Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community. Welcome to Urban Unwitches, a podcast to educate, inform, and expand the pagan community. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches, and listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also join us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches. Now, back to the show. Hi.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm okay. I want to address the dog in the room.
There's
the
adorable.
Dog in the room.
Hello, fluffy
adorableness. Over there, that dog.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the story about why the dog is in the room. Normally, I lock the dogs out of the room. But this old man, he's 14, and he's Tony's dog. And he has hurt his ACL. In a dog, they call it a CCL. But it's the ACL ligament in the knee. So he hurt that chasing after the big dog, my dog, the other day. And then I yesterday took them out on a walk, and we have a big back deck that is got gates on it, and we can let the dogs roam there and they can't get out. As long as the gates are locked, because he does know how to pull them open if they're not locked. So they have to be locked. So, but I always check, right, before I leave them on the porch. But I left them on the porch because they both kind of laid down in the sun, and it was a beautiful day here yesterday. And I came into my office to work, and all of a sudden there's dog crying. I mean, loud dog crying. And I'm like, what happened? And so I run out there, and this little dog is just crying. And my big dog is trying to play with him and hitting him on the head with his. He thinks this is fun, right? He has no concept that this dog is not wanting to play. And that's why he's making these noises. So I don't know what happened, and I was worried that he had hurt himself further. So I can't leave them alone now. I can't leave the big dog and the little dog alone, because I don't know what the big dog is going to get into, because he's a doofus. Evidently, he thinks if you cry, that means just hit you on the head some more, and that's fine. And every time you hit him on the head, he would get louder. Hit louder, louder, louder. I was like, dang, dog, go in the house. Go away. What is the matter with you? So that's why I have a dog in the room, because I had to separate them, and I'd rather keep the old man, who's not likely to get up and get restless. He sleeps a lot. So that's why the dog is in the room today.
So out of curiosity,
yeah.
Do you think we are currently recording?
Yes, we are.
We are recording. It never notified me.
I have a big recording button.
You're right. It did, but it usually notifies me. Oh my goodness. The computer tricked me. The computer completely tricked me. I feel betrayed. I was like, why is she referring to the dog as the dog instead of by the dog's name, which I'm very familiar with and adore? And then I'm like, okay. So I guess we are recording. Dia tricked me.
Right.
Like it's not working.
That's what I said. There's nothing wrong with what we do. This is our faith. There's nothing wrong with our faith. And we aren't interested in your faith. We're not proselytizing to you.
Right. Now, I want us to actually, like, because when you called me about this and I looked at it, I giggled literally for the rest of the morning. Like I didn't really want to go to work that morning, but that put an extra zhuzh in my giddy up, because of all the TikToks they could have chosen.
Right.
They chose the one with the coffee cup. Like, of all the things that have come out of my mouth on this podcast, that's the one they chose. I'm hoping it's a bot, because if it's not, I don't even know what to do with that.
Oh my
So
God. It was so funny that it was like how Kyler's coffee cup, which he's drinking out of today.
yes,
This
irony.
huge, it's the size of his head. And then the person wrote something like, all we can do for these violent lost souls is pray for them. And I'm like, what?
Mm,
Like, did you watch the TikTok? Because it was about coffee.
yeah. Which, I mean, there
Was-
is a conceptual connection. Without coffee, there is a potentiality for me to become violent. Like, I mean, in all truth, like if we're painting with the color reality. But yeah, it just, the tones didn't seem to match. I'm like, really?
no.
That's the one you choose? Like, I had just called
Well,
myself the
and
whitest white man in America, and you chose the coffee one. Okay, choices.
right, right. Which I love that some of our people of color have laughed at and got that it was a joke, which was nice.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
whitest Caucasian to ever Caucasian. I do
Hmm.
have, though, today I was checking TikTok, and someone has said that the appropriate speaker first of the violent, we our ancestors were so uptight the British kicked them out.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
The
original stater of that was Robin Williams.
It is, yeah. That's where I got it from.
And so they were like, you didn't, Robin Williams isn't cited. I'm like, okay, well, then I'll bring it up.
I mean, it okay, so here's the thing. Um Generally when I say that, I say, and like good Saint Robin of the Williams said,
Right.
our ancestors are so uptight, the British kicked them out, for everyone, so that it is clearly cited. Because there is such a thing as too overly anal retentive. I mean, I'm all for citing, but like, it was a line from a stand-up comedy show from 2005. It was his HBO special, which was one of his master works. That special was directed by James Cameron, following like Titanic and all that. So like, it was amazing. And he even jokes about the fact that James Cameron will never want to work with him again, because he ad-libbed, like, the day they decided to do the shoot for this, he just decided to dump a whole bunch of new material into his act and just ad lib it. And James Cameron was like back in the sound booth, just like throwing headsets and losing his mind or something. Like, it's hilarious. It's part of the show. So like, yes, no, that statement did come from Robin Williams. And because Robin Williams, I basically treat as my personal patron saint, many of the things that are funny in nature, or at least in concept, came from Robin Williams, because the man was also brilliant. Like, he was
Yes.
absolutely brilliant. And instead of feeling any kind of way for being slapped for not citing something, I'm just going to be thankful that someone else out there has heard the holy writ of Saint Robin of the Williams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the other thing I've noticed, is that our Dixie Carter TikTok has done zilch. I mean, like 20.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think it's a site that most people don't know who Dixie Carter is. And
It's a
they
thing.
didn't grow up on Designing Women. So they don't know that Dixie
Yeah.
Carter is a character on Designing Women. So
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, but TikTok does not find it amusing.
Well, I mean, it's a whole different generation. Like, Golden Girls has kind of transcended time, because Betty White became
Yeah,
super famous after that. Like, she lived long
right.
enough that she became like the symbol of humorous resistance through some fun times. But didn't she die like on like New Year's of 2020 or something? I forget the exact
I'm not
date now,
sure.
but
I
there
don't know
there
when
were
she died.
there were memes of her like treating 2020, because that was COVID. I remember it was during COVID when she finally passed. And I say finally, like, we were anticipating, I guess we were in fear, because I wanted to cry for 3 days. But there was a meme of her like
Yeah.
grabbing onto Gollum, with like 2020 over his head, like when he's grabbing on him, he's about to throw him into the fire at the end of Lord of the Rings. And it's like, yeah, Betty White took this year out for us. And I'm like, only Betty could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. She died December 31st, 2021, and she
Mm,
was 99. Betty
yeah.
White was 99. So the other thing I want to address is I am so glad that our TikToks are doing well. And I'm going to ask out there in TikTok land that you go to your favorite podcasting network and download Urban on Witches. We can't link in TikTok, but we are asking you, please do that. I have some personal watch goals, and one of them is to get 100 downloads in 30 days. So even if you don't listen, I don't care. Just download the podcast.
Right.
So I can count you as a number.
Well, we would prefer that you listen. Like, let's.
We would prefer if you listen, but downloading is important. That's the thing. You have to download. It doesn't count if you don't download. So you have to download it from your favorite podcasting network. And I actually have told a few people this, because if you listen to it, it doesn't count. It's so bizarre. So you can listen to us, but it's not counting that as a download, as a listen. So I know, isn't that weird? So you have to really download it. And I actually have some friends that once I told them that, they go and religiously download for me. Yeah. So you have to download, and we ask that you do download, please. That would be great. Because I want 100 downloads in a 30-day period. And
that's your call to action,
now number
guys.
5. We're now number 5.
Of what?
Of the number downloads for Circle podcasts. Oh,
that's fine. Numbers are just a construct. We're fabulous. It's okay. I'm sure it'll eke back up. Listen, the coffee is just beginning to hit. The anesthesia of joy is circulating in my system. I care so much less about the little things right now because I can taste the hazelnut and the goodness. Like this morning you might describe me as hazelnutty. That was as awful as I intended. No, that was deliberately awful. I did that on
deliberately
purpose.
Awful.
Deliberately awful. I've chosen today. My brain and spirit have chosen violence. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe the proselytizers were onto something. I don't
know. So for those of you who don't know, I actually mark when Kyler is funny, so that I can find it next when I listen back, so I can make the TikTok. So if you see me every once in a while when Kyler's funny and then I'm writing something, it's because I'm writing down the key terms so that I don't forget later. So Kyler thinks that's amusing, but it's true. It's what I do.
I have never had anyone track when I throw out a one-liner before. I don't know how I feel about this level of observation. Remember, the observer inherently impacts the nature of the observed.
Oh my God. Throw out some axioms of magic, why don't you? Because that is an axiom of magic.
I got it from a bird watching book, but yeah, axioms of magic.
We're on today.
Today shall be thoroughly unserious, folks. I apologize.
Oh my goodness. And we're talking about epistemology. What is it? Epistemology.
Pagan epistemology, and also like Christianity and sun worship. So understand that epistemology, which is a big, scary, unpleasant word, is going to be a much smaller portion than actually exploring concepts of like Christianity and Mithraism and like solar worship kind of all put in together, because you can't have one of those without the other two. They're kind of interlinked. But we will not spend a huge amount of time on epistemology just because it would put us all to sleep. But it is a very, very necessary thing.
I'm going to be the person. What is epistemology?
Epistemology is basically, well, okay, earlier someone said Robin Williams wasn't cited. That statement is rooted in epistemology. It is the nature of your sources. It is the verifiability of your sources. So you've got primary, secondary, and tertiary sources. So if you have spent any time in college, Wikipedia is not an acceptable source for a research paper, or at least it didn't used to be. Now, it is a really good landing place to find where the people who did the Wikipedia page got their sources. You will find the vast majority of the people on Wikipedia, well, not the vast majority, a chunk of them, you want to actually look at the sources, because what they have put in their page and what is in that resource material doesn't always mirror particularly well. I've discovered this to my detriment many times. So, what is a primary source? I figure we'll go ahead and get this chunky bit out of the way, just
Okay.
so everybody can understand. When Kyler says the internet is a wonderful place full of lots of information and misinformation, it's always difficult to tell the difference between gospel and guerrilla shit. This is what he's talking about. When I learned actual epistemology, it really blew the top off my head because I had to unlearn a lot of stuff about magic and the craft and history and lore and all of that because so much had just been somebody's what we call UPG, unverifiable personal gnosis. They had gone into a trance or they had a religious experience and they wrote it down. And then later, nobody had the context for that and it was taken as gospel. That happened a lot when the craft was coming back. So a
That's
primary
the whole
source,
story of Paul.
yeah, that's the story of pretty much all the gospels because we know that
Yep.
those weren't written until later, which is one of the things we're going to chat about today. Um, and I do want to, I'm going to say this multiple times just because I have seen the TikToks of people arguing scripture. We're not doing that. I am not a Christian theologian. I know a lot of Christian history. I know the context of the Bible. I am not debating scripture. I am not a Christian. I'm not a Christian historian. I know it within the context of how it affects the world around it. So I will tell you from personal experience as the guy who generally doesn't lose debate style arguments, don't debate scripture. If it's not your religion, don't do it. Like that's a trap. It's quicksand. Um there's a scripture for literally everything, pro
Yeah.
and against. Like there's over 3,000 documented contradictions in the Bible, depending on which Bible you're looking at. Like save your time, save that spike in your blood pressure for a really good sandwich, later on. Um we should probably start recording before I've done coffee because apparently that's when I'm at my sassiest. So, first primary sources are going to be people who were actually there, like the writings of someone who actually saw
Oh.
it. Usually, especially if you're looking into pagany things, that's often in another language. So, you're trying to find the most reliable after that, if you can't actually read the language that it's written in, you're trying to find the most reliable direct translation. So like if you're getting something from the University of Chicago's library, from the Journal of Anthropology or American Archaeology, those are really good sources. A really excellent example is the Havamal or the Prose Eddas, the epic sagas of the Norse religions.
Yes.
Um, those were not written down until a Christian monk, Snorrie Sturluson, because that is my favorite name in history ever. Tell me that's not a Harry Potter character. So
It
Snorri
is.
Snorri Sturluson was a monk and he wanted to write all this down. Now, the Norse have a very interesting story about how they were converted to Christianity. We're not going to go into that right now, just because you're going to have to keep me on track today because my brain is fractaling. So,
Hmm.
that's your job. Get the leash, get the whip. It'll be a fun time. Um, so he wrote this down. Well, I don't read Old Icelandic.
Right.
And there's 100 different versions of these stories. They've been
Yes.
novelized. I mean, even Neil Gaiman, who was once beloved but is now the awkward in the corner, he novelized. Oh, did you not hear about Neil Gaiman?
No.
Oh, well, we can't love Neil anymore.
Okay.
It's the reason why we're not getting more of Sandman. Neil Gaiman has been, I guess,
Oh.
outed as a lot of like potential SA, like really stepping over the line, a
Oh.
lot of emotional, like bad stuff. I don't know all the details, so I don't want to go deep into it here because I
Right.
I don't want to be cited for, spreading it if it's not actually true. But there's been a lot of apparently credible
There's an
articles,
alleged, there's allegations of SA.
lots of allegations
Mhm.
of very, very bad crossy the line, even bad parenty things. So
Ooh.
yeah, it's one of those things.
That's not
I
good.
don't again, I don't know how true it is, and I do not want to feed the internet boulder
Right.
rolling down the side of a hill if it's not true, but I have not had enough free time in my world to look into it yet.
To look into it.
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
so many other things going on. Anyway, but he did write a novelization of the Norse myths.
Right.
So there are folks they read old Icelandic, they read old Norwegian and all that, and they can translate these, and those are the best of those are what we should be going for if we're looking for a really good source. Now, as much as I love Neil Gaiman's writings, he deliberately novelized this. He wrote them in the way of a bard telling a story, not the way of
Right.
an academic translating an original source. So
Right.
you've got primary, then you've got secondary. These are like a synopsis of someone who researched and read somebody who was actually there. And
Right.
then there's tertiary sources, aka 99.999% of the internet. Um, that is, I put together information from 5 different online things that I did not check into the provenance of and wove it all together. Or I saw a TikTok on Witch Talk and it told me this. Those are unverifiable sources. I am not in any way pointing a finger at Witch Talk because I have spent many an hour in my life there. Um, Even though they've told me I'm not witchy enough to be witchy, but that's fine. That hurt will
Hail
live in
the
my heart.
unwitch.
Hail the
Hail the
unwitch.
unwitch.
Sing it, sister, testify. Um, the thing is, those sources, as fun as they are, more often than not, they're going to fit our head canon. The algorithm is going to farm stuff that likes our interest enough. These algorithms, while stupid, are also very smart. And so that's one of the reasons. If you look around at the world today, we've all got that one family member who just does not know what is happening on Earth One. They don't know what's happening in objective reality. Like you're seeing the news and it's saying something, and then they're seeing the news and you're wondering, like, where is their news coming from? That's because they're not doing any of their research. Their news sources don't pass the smell test because what they're hearing fits their head canon. So they're only tuning in to those sources.
Right.
Myself, I am obviously not somebody who spends a lot of time on Fox News, and yet I spend time on Fox News.
Right.
I compare sources from multiple different places. And sadly, on the right, Fox News is actually like the least scary on the more conservative side of things,
Right.
unfortunately. It feels like I need a bath after I watch it. And I regularly yell at Sean Hannity the few times that I have seen his face. That man needs a new haircut desperately. Like his hair offends me. But that is epistemology. So when an academic is doing research, when they are writing a paper, when they're preparing a class, a good syllabus is going to have a ton of sources at the
Yeah.
end of it. This is where I'm getting my information. These are the books outside of the textbook that you're probably going to want to read. Very important, guys, because in when it comes to paganism, any what we'll consider quote unquote alternative or eco-spiritual faith, a lot of it is reconstructionism. It's coming from stories and the leftovers of a culture that by and large was wiped out by the advent of apostolic Catholic Christianity. And so we're having to piece things together. And that means you're going to want the best possible sources, or you are going to get factual misinformation.
Yes.
A really good example of this. And understand, I adore Ray Buckland. I adore Starhawk.
Yeah.
I adore them to pieces. I have never had the opportunity to meet either one of them, but I would consider it
Mhm.
like a major thing scratched off my bucket list. If you
Ray
look
is
at,
dead.
yeah, well, I mean, the Mighty Dead. If anybody could make it into the Mighty Dead, it's probably Ray Buckland.
I would
I,
think.
you know what? Much like Betty White, I still forget that he's passed. I still forget that he's passed beyond the veil, and I don't know why. It's like my brain just says, no, this can't have happened because he's literally been around. He was one of the very first books I ever read, like 30
Bucky's Blue
years
Book.
ago. Bucky's big blue book that wouldn't fit on any of my little bookshelves, not a single one. It had to lay flat across the top because it was special and
Yep.
it was so that blue book has been the bane of every evangelicist for so many years. It's like it's like a beloved cockroach. You just can't get rid of it. It's everywhere. Um, but yeah, Ray Buckland. If you look at the beginning of Bucky's Big Blue Book or Ray Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, the very beginning of it talks about the history of animism and Wicca and all of that, and it makes some large claims about the
Right.
provenance of Wicca and the practices therein. And it's just not true. So on this show, you'll hear us kind of cackle every now and then about the unbroken lineage all the way back to the vegan matriarchy of Atlantis. That's one of the reasons why that joke is funny to those of us who've been around a while. We remember the 80s and 90s and early 2000s when there were people who believed that Wicca is descended directly from the Isle of Atlantis with their flying cars and all that other. That's because the people who wrote the books when these first came out, they put in that legend that came down from, I believe it was Buckland and that general stew of people at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a great primary source. And anybody who says that they remember the memories of the vegan matriarchy of Atlantis, that is unverifiable personal gnosis. So
yes.
So that's the boring bit.
That's the epistemology.
Epistemologies.
Am I saying it right? Epistemology.
You are. Epistemology.
I feel good then because I'm very careful to cite my sources and to cite where I get something from. That way, if the source is wrong, at least you know why I said it.
Yes.
And I did that. I actually taught at the Pagan World Congress, which is now online. You can go look it up. Under Pagans with Disabilities and Chronic Illnesses. If you put Pagans with Disabilities and Chronic Illnesses in, my video will come up now, the very first one. But I talk about disabilities and I quote a bunch of statistics. And then I actually, in my notes, wrote down where I got it from and the date that I accessed it. And that was, nobody can see that but me. That's how anal I am about it, because there's so many sources out there that aren't, verifiable. And that's why when we talk about history a lot, I'm very clear about what Richard Sells, my teacher, taught me. And Kyler is the same. He'll talk about Poppy taught me this, or the CAW said this, right? So he's very careful. We're very careful about citing where we get things from, because as an author myself, I hate it when people rip me off. It pisses me off really bad. Really bad. It makes me very mad. In fact, somebody ripped off my whole book and then presented it as theirs and then gave me a copy. Balls. This person had balls. And I was like,
brass. What? I did not know this.
She didn't cite me. Like, you're going to write a whole book that's like my book, and then you're not going to cite me? Are you serious right now? Yeah, it was bad. I was pissed.
See, that's the thing. You can take my words all day long. Just don't take them out of context. And I'd like an honorable mention. That's all I want. Just because if it's a wrong statement, I want someone to correct me. That's the thing.
Yes.
Like the information that I have gathered in my study of the gods, of the spirit, of my path of spirituality. If I have, especially if it's like a core or fundamental belief, if there's something factually wrong about that, I'm not going to protect my headcanon. I'm going to use that term a lot right now because I'm seriously on this headcanon kick. Like it is the best and worst thing that's ever happened to humanity. I want to know that it's I want to be accurate. Like I want to live in an actual verifiable world. That's what I like. Maybe that's asking too high an ask, but
sometimes with the internet, maybe.
Definitely with the interwebs. Yeah, she don't like to be truthful. So
we're actually right. So we're talking about Mithras today, and its intersection between paganism and Christianity, which is one of my favorite topics.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And actually, the story of how I really came to paganism has to do with Mithras, because I was Catholic for a hot minute and I was still researching the church. And then I came across Mithras and was like, oh, well, crap. I guess I'm not a Christian, because Mithras was first. The reason I was Catholic was because Paul established the Catholic Church. And so I had left Protestant religions because Paul was the establisher of the Catholic Church. And it turns out Paul ripped somebody off.
Yeah. That that scandal is but a drop in the bucket, as it were. There's a lot of ripping off that happens, and not even so much ripping off. Just we know that whole sections of the Bible were written hundreds of years after the martyrs themselves had passed, after the disciples were gone, and it was like several hundred years of telephone. Um, I've always found it so interesting. You were like the fifth or sixth woman that I know who's found their way into some form of Christianity because of the writings of Paul, which Paul doesn't seem to like women very much. I don't really understand that. Like
Nope.
my aunt, who basically was the one who taught me to question everything and then later regretted that I questioned everything.
Right.
It's like you don't want me to learn the lesson, don't teach it. She absolutely despised the writings of Paul. She was my Sunday school teacher. She taught my vacation
Right.
Bible study, and she was a forthright, formidable. Well, she still is. We just don't talk. She was a forthright, formidable woman, and she regularly locked horns with the pastor because of we were Baptist, like Southern Baptist, and we were
Mm.
the good clothes on Sunday. Everybody drove a Cadillac kind of Baptist, unless you didn't drive a
Mm-hmm.
Cadillac, in which case you sat in the back pews. But yeah, no, she would rant about the writings of Paul because they were very misogynistic. They were
They
very
were.
misogynistic. Um, so Mithras. So if I were to, and I've asked this question of my mother, I'm like, Mom, if I were to bring up a Messiah, a divine figure, as it were, who was born to a virgin on December 25th, uses bread and wine in their communion, was martyred for the good of all mankind, and was resurrected during the spring. Who would I be talking about? She's like, well, Jesus.
Mithras.
Mithras. So there is so much history here. Like, legit, I could open my mouth and not stop talking for 3 hours and not cover a fraction of it. I am not going to do that to you or to Dia, who is the most patient woman in North America, because she deals with my tangents and she never makes me feel overly bad about it. Any bad feeling is because I judge myself. Um, in this particular case, let's establish one thing right away. The worship of Christianity is based on the worship of the sun. It is solar worship.
Yes.
The
Yes.
reason for this is when Constantine, who was, to the best of our knowledge, never actually baptized as a Christian, he was actually a Mithraic high priest. He was the head of the Church of Mithras. When he conquered his opponent, there was a triumvirate, there was a triad ruler in Rome. One of them died, the other two went to war, and it was pretty evenly matched. Then Constantine converted everybody over to kind of Christianity, and they worked together as a unit. It's a whole history of it. He won, and he became the first Christian emperor of Rome. He was actually baptized forcibly on his deathbed because he had never been baptized. At least that is what I have learned. Now, if I am incorrect about that, please politely and respectfully give me a better source, because I will devour that source. This is one of my favorite areas of research. At the time, Rome had become very what we call a soft polytheistic culture, right? So hard polytheism is you believe in many gods. Hard polytheism is they're all individual, distinct deities with their own personalities and all that. Soft polytheism is kind of a process of Hinduism, the process of all gods becoming one god. So soft polytheism is all of the gods, yeah, maybe they're a little distinct, maybe they're different facets of one another, but they all share this communal core thread, right? So by and large, Rome, which was super metropolitan, super cosmopolitan by this point because it spread everywhere, they had kind of like boiled it down to the sun and moon and different faces of the sun and moon. Incidentally, if a few historical and political things had gone left at Albuquerque, we would actually have Holy Isis, Mother of the Moon, instead of Jesus Christ and the Holy Father. Like, the second largest cult in Rome was lunar worship, and the face of that was the goddess Isis from Egypt. So not even
Mm-hmm.
Juno, like she was like who was the mother, the matriarch of the Roman pantheon. By and large, they were not really worshipped by that point.
Hmm.
So you have the solar cult of Mithras, and then there's this conversion over. And so there was no religion around Christianity. He was a demonstrator. He was a social activist, and there were followers of his religion or his path, but it was more a philosophy.
Hmm.
It wasn't what we later know it as. They didn't just one day spring up and here is Christianity and then one day it takes power. That religion had to be built. And it was built on the framework of Mithraism. Recently, and when I say recently, I mean within the last 20 years, if you look under Rome, Rome is a city built on top of a city, on top of a city, and so on ad infinitum. They found a fully intact,
Yep.
perfectly preserved Mithraic chapel, and it has a mural of the Mithraic Mass, and it is the Catholic Mass from start to finish. So everybody who says Catholicism is pagan, by and large, they are right. Because
Right.
every step of it, the cleansing with the censer, the anointing and the scourging, or spurging with the holy water, all of that, that is a pagan process. And it is mirrored in today's pagan rituals. So Mithras is basically Jesus. And when you think about it, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, Mithras was the son of the sun. If you look back at some of the names of the Roman Caesars, the Roman emperors, Sol Invictus Imperior, son of the
Hmm.
unconquerable sun, you know,
Right.
um, there were a lot of different terms like Sol Ecternus, the eternal sun, Sol Divwe, divine son or sun god, all of that. These are all concepts that were passed down through Christianity. I'm going to breathe now, do you? So that,
Yep.
I don't just continue to ramble.
Well, I'm interested, but that I'm weird that way. One of the things I was going to say is one of the things I was going to say is that I look at henotheism as a diamond, and I
Hmm.
may or may not have mentioned this before, but I have the belief, this is my personal belief, that divinity is a diamond, and as the light strikes this diamond, the different colors are the different aspects of the different gods. And so if
Hmm.
I move one direction, I can see the Morgan, who I worship. Or if I move the other way, I might see the Mother Mary. And if I move another way, I can see Mithras. So for me, they're all the same God. It's, one God. All the gods are one God, and all the one gods are all the many gods. That's kind of how I view it. Um, and I think that's oh, I think more pagans believe that way or believe in straight animism, which is the belief
Hmm.
that the earth itself is alive and has a spirit, and you can commune with that. I think
Hmm.
those two probably are the most popular in my opinion. And then you do have the hard polytheists. There are some really,
Hmm.
I've met hard polytheists, and they are hard polytheists that go
They can
in.
be. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
are all in about the
Yeah.
polytheism. But I am definitely a soft polytheist for sure. And that and the worship of uh ancestors. Yeah.
Hmm.
Those are Both
That's
of those are part of my
mhm.
makeup.
Ancestor worship is really a gateway worship. We'll put it that way. I'm talking about ancestor worship like it's discovering pot for the first time. Um, is that what we still call it? I don't know. The kids call things so many different things today. I'm
Weed. I
lost.
think they call it weed.
Is
I
it?
don't know.
That seems.
I'll have to ask Samuel.
Ask
Oh my
Sam.
God, wait. I have a total tangent. I have a total tangent. I just
It's
thought of
not
this.
me this time. I'm
It's
so
not you, but this
thrilled.
is so funny. So Tony came up and said, "Hey, I have a drinking game for Urban on Witches." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Every time Dia mentions Tony, you have to drink." Because evidently he listened to something where I talked about him over and over and over. So anyway, sorry, that was total tangent.
I love that was Tony's suggestion. I love that the Tony drinking game was created by the Tony. I love that.
Yes. Yep.
I'm working so
So,
hard in my soul not to make a Tony the Tiger joke right now. Um,
well, I had to mention him because if you're playing the game,
Oh,
I had to
absolutely.
give you a chance to drink.
The question is, if are we supposed to do it when we listen to the podcast or when we're making the podcast? Because I've always got
I don't
coffee.
know. Well, I think the next time we meet, we should get coffee, and then every time I mention Tony, we have to drink.
Absolutely. Also, Tony, if you're listening to this, I'm laying down your call to action, my friend. You have to write down the rules and codices of this process. Like, you have created the game, you had the good idea, so now you have to manifest it. I need the full rule book printed and copyrighted. You have a week.
I'll let him know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. That was a total tangent. We were talking about Mithras, and
We were.
we got off on that because I thought of Samuel, and Samuel made me think of Tony, and that's how I got there. Just if anybody's playing along, that's how I got to that place.
Yeah, I've learned not to share with Chris my jumps, between my conceptual jumps, because he is a trained, licensed, practicing psychologist, and I don't need the looks of judgment. Okay. Like, he has snorted and shook his head and said, I will never understand how your brain works. And I'm like, that is why we work, because I keep it interesting for you. And then he gives me a look. He's like, yeah, no, that's why we work. Uh-huh. And then he just kind of walks away, and I feel judged, but in a good, loving way. I don't know. Being Southern leaves you with a lot of interesting, like, loose threads.
Yes.
So the funny thing is, and this is, kind of jumping back into Christianity and Mithras.
Right.
I for those who know me well, I am known as somebody who rants. I have very strong opinions. I'm very passionate, and some of my best classes have been very much a Lewis Black rant style. Like, once I get going in a direction, a massive amount of information will fall out of my mouth hole. Um, One of the things that triggers this more often than not is misinformation. We get raised up in these traditions. Now, a lot of people are still coming to the craft from a background of Judeo Christianity. And by and large, if all you study is the Bible, you are getting a very thin slice, and often very contradictory thin slice, of where that religion comes from. You don't know about the heresies. You don't know about, like, the Arian heresies and, the Roman Church playing its second favorite game of all time, stabby, stab, stab, and burn the heretic. Like, it's a thing. There's a lot of history that goes into this, and that's how we get to today. Like, how do we get to Becky in a super church and a mega church giving Joel Osteens of the world all of their money, and
Right.
Westboro Baptist picketing the funerals of fallen soldiers? How do we get there from where we were? And that is infinitely fascinating to me. The long, slow, painfully delicious slide of
Right.
common sense into just nonsensicality. And the way that people will argue this headcanon, the modern, like, Christian and evangelical mindset, is rooted in this headcanon around truths that do not exist. And they feel very passionate about that. And how we got there from 1800 to 2000 years ago,
Right.
it's like, wow, there's so much in between, and this isn't even my religion, but I still fall into the rabbit hole every single time. Every time.
Well, and I'm always fascinated because we're Southern Baptist, and Southern Baptists are often called hellfire and brimstone Baptists.
Oh, yes.
Where they're talking about hell and it's burning and all of this stuff that happens if you're not a Christian. That doctrine comes out of the great earthquake of San Francisco. Because what happened was they had this great earthquake, and this traveling preacher set up a tent and started helping people, and he was a hailfire and brimstone person. So I find it fascinating that it comes out of California.
Yeah.
And makes its way down into the South, where it really takes root. Like, this guy traveled after the great, but it really was this, like, he was preaching that the earthquake was, part of God's wrath. And so a lot of these things that are headcanon for Southern Baptists come right out of that earthquake and the devastation that was after that earthquake. And that just fascinates me. Really does.
Yeah. One of the other fun things, and this is, I'm sure somebody will on the internet will probably argue with this, but my understanding of like even the book of Revelations, the number of times my
Yep.
mother has come to me and said, this is a prophecy from Revelations. This is the end times. And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, 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 it's not. The book of Revelations is not prophetic. It was never meant to be prophetic. My understanding is the book of Revelations was written by somebody who was in a penal colony for quote unquote being a Christian. Here's the thing that I'm gonna throw it on the table, and
Okay.
this is something that I got largely from a book, The Myth of Persecution. I've mentioned it multiple times
Mm-hmm.
by author Candida Moss. At the very least, what she's written has really reinforced my understanding of this. The time of the martyrs is by and large totally out of context.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, there were a lot of people martyred at various times who were Christian. They were not martyred just because they practiced Christianity. They were martyred because of what they did in the name of Christianity, which is a very
Right.
big difference. Now, there were
Difference.
some times, like under Emperor Diocletian, who he actively sought them out. But even if you look at the historical writings we have of the time, there's one passage I will fully admit I forgot where it came from. In the time of Diocletian, Christians were pulled down from their high offices and cast into the street. They were basically charged and all that. If they were constantly just being persecuted, how did they attain high office in the first place?
Right.
That was like, yeah, Diocletian was kind of a madman. So was Nero. They were very draconian and a little insane in what they did. But Christians would recognize no God other than their God because it is a
Right.
monotheistic faith. Here's the issue with that. In Rome, much like in Egypt, the Pharaoh was the son of the gods. He was the mouthpiece of the gods. The same thing happened in Rome. So, Sol Invictus Imperator, okay, the son of the unconquerable sun, the emperor, the Caesar, whoever, whatever was holding the title at the time, because they had multiple different terms, they were the child of the gods. And so they were seen as a living God. And so, under that authority, Christians would not bow to Roman law. They would not, a lot of times in the court proceedings, they had to swear an oath that they weren't going to do things again and all that. And they could not do that to the Roman state because it was the face of, to them, a pagan deity. And so they would not honor the court itself. Also, most people don't realize this because Catholicism is not as big in the US as Protestantism is. In classic Christianity, a lot of folks believe that when you die, you go to heaven, right? Like you die and your spirit
Right.
ascends into heaven. That is not
Yep.
how Christianity is written. When you die, you stay moldering in your coffin
Right.
until the second coming, unless or you go into purgatory. There's some variations, but unless you are martyred for your faith. If you're
Right.
martyred for your faith, you do not pass go, you collect all them 200s and you go straight up. So there are actually written attestations of Roman magistrates where Christians who were kind of caught in the spirit would throw themselves in front of their carriages trying to martyr themselves for their faith.
Yeah.
Like it was a whole thing. And that's something you get with ecstatic religions. Paganism is by and large born out of fertility religions and
Fertility.
practices that keep the world turning. Christianity is an ecstatic religion. Like when you get slain in the spirit, like every time you go to church, you should be having this peak experience. The problem is some people can't handle that. And eventually things happen, people act
Yeah.
out in weird and unusual ways. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a big element of it. And those beliefs have changed and transmuted, but like
Right.
anybody who's not Christian in this country knows that Christianity is not under attack in this country. It has never
No.
been under attack in this country.
No.
All we want is just a fair shake.
Right.
There are other holidays that are practiced around the end of December. The 21st and 22nd is the longest night of the year. Every culture on the planet has some kind of religious or socio-religious observance around the solstice. December 25th is special to a lot of people and not just practicing Christians. Happy holidays, it's literally just a mark of respect. It is not an attack
Yep.
on Christianity. So that drives me bonkers because it is this persecution myth that was baked into the clay at the start of Christianity, and it has continued on. Now, that's not to say there was never persecution. At some point or another,
Right.
every group has been persecuted by another group.
Right.
But it's like, it drives me bonkers because, and I hope we don't have to edit this out because it may be a little too controversial. Legitimately, the ones who have historically done more persecution than any other group at large in history is playing the role of victim today. And we see an entire, like the whole Christian nationalist movement is based around that. Like, if you even look at it, like the topic of abortion, the Bible's pro-abortion.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible is actually pro-abortion. It actually has a step-by-step process for it. And there's a recipe. It doesn't give you the recipe, but it does actually tell you, and she will drink the bitter waters. If you talk to a Christian today, God is all about pro-babies. And that's not what the Bible says at all. I don't know of any other place where it's brought up except for that one passage, and it is very clearly pro drinking the bitter waters under certain circumstances. So, like, yeah, it's how how the largest group in this country practices their religion versus the way it was originally written. That discrepancy kind of lives rent free in my brain often.
Right. I have two things to say about this. The whole thing about they're not acknowledging the Roman state really gives me a different view of the Bible verse, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and unto God what is God's, which is interesting to me because that really helps me understand why Jesus was seen as such a radical, even to Christians of that current day, right? Even to those practicing this Christianity at the time that Jesus was alive. I could see why something like that would be very, very controversial, given what was happening at the time. And then the second thing, I actually had this conversation today. I had somebody quote me a Bible verse, and I said, "What Bible?" Just curious that you get that from. And they said the King James Version. And I said, that is the worst version of the Bible as far as translation goes, right? If you want a good translation, you need to do the English Standard Version or any other version, any other version but the King James or anything based on the King James, because it's not the same. And this guy had been quoting to me this Bible verse over and over, and you are gods among men. And so when I told him this, he went and looked up this Bible verse, and it says, you are mighty among men. And he went, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm like, yeah, that's all through the Bible, man. You gotta get the right version and get a version that, that is not tainted by one man's agenda, which is what the King James Version is.
And it was a thick agenda. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about the King James Version of the Bible that I just loves. So one, here's the thing about King James. He was a notorious sodomite. He also hated witches. He believed that witches summoned the storm that sank the ship carrying his parents. So he believed that he was constantly that witches were constantly trying to assassinate him. Arguably, he had some very interesting decisions as king, so I'm not surprised if somebody wanted to assassinate him. But he was also a notorious sodomite. Like George and Mary, I think, is the miniseries with Nicholas Galitzine in it. I have not had a chance to see it yet, but I've heard it's fairly good. That's literally the story of like a young courtier seducing the king and all that. These things happened. Like, they happened. King James was a notorious sodomite. And so during his reign, like when his scholars were researching the King James Version of the Bible, they went to what's a source material called the Masoretic texts. Now, again, not a Christian theologian, but my understanding is the Masoretic texts were written in a very specific form of prose. It is not something that you can just literally translate and get the
Right.
actual full correct original meaning. And
Right.
a lot of it is metaphorical. A lot of it is just very prosaic way of saying things. And it might surprise some people to know that historians 500 years ago didn't have the exacting academic level that we have in modern research practices.
Mhm.
Also, they had a very powerful king breathing down their neck. For instance, there is a term, I forget the Aramaic word for it, but thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
Right.
Yeah,
This
no,
is actually, I had this conversation, this
yeah,
specific
yeah.
conversation,
Thou shalt not suffer a poisoner to live.
to live.
The thing is, if you poison your father or you poison your mother or whatever, you are a judge for this, you cannot inherit. Like it has nothing really to do with the witch. The witchcraft as we practice it today wasn't a thing in archaic
Right.
Israel and Judea. It wasn't a thing in the same way. So to say that
Right.
one will not suffer a witch to live, they didn't believe in the same way. Also, original, I say original, like they weren't like a culture with like thousands of years of history. Classic Judaism was not entirely monotheistic. They were
Right.
um they were monists. There we go. Took my brain a second. Even if you look in the Bible, it's Psalms in there somewhere. I forget the exact scripture because I haven't looked it up in a while. But and God sat in council amongst his brethren, and amongst them
Right.
there was El Adonai, El Batai, Elohim, and all that. And amongst them he was chiefest. They believed that there were many gods. They just believed theirs was the biggest and the best. And that was who they
Right.
had their covenant with. So lots of things that most people don't really know about Christianity, including Christians. And then we get to deal with the backlash of that. But yeah, no, King
And that
James,
is Psalms 82:1.
I thought it was
God
82.
standeth in the congregation of the mighty, and he judgeth among the gods. That's the King James Version text.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the context is the psalm depicts God as the supreme judge in the council of all divine beings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there is definitely a view of more than one God. And also, if they didn't believe in other gods, why would you have the Ten Commandments say, and thou shalt have no other God before me? Like, why even have that
Right. Right.
if you don't believe in other gods? It seems counterintuitive, right? Why would you say that if there weren't other gods around, right?
Right.
And the way I've heard this preached in when I was growing up was that our gods were the television or Facebook or anything
Mm-hmm.
that had a hold over us, anything that could have an addictive power over us. That's what they were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, which is bull crap because they didn't have Facebook and television.
Right.
You
They at
can't
the
say
time.
that. They didn't have those
Right.
things.
Biblically, the context would be when Moses came down from the mountain, he had his Ten Commandments. The Jews who'd escaped during the Exodus and gotten their way out of Israel, they'd crossed the Red Sea after he parted it and all that. They were worshiping the golden bull.
Right.
And like he came down and it was just kind of this kind of orgiastic party and all that. And he was just over it. He was verklempt, right? The problem is that word is a Yiddish word, y'all. I have a very good friend who I've known for many, many years who will throw Yiddish at me because she is, in her words, a Long Island Jewess. And she has taught me many wonderful Yiddish words, and it is a wonderfully descriptive language that I have absolutely no cultural right to whatsoever. So please do not judge me too harshly. It's just it's Germanic, and I love it. Yeah, no, and that's the thing is like there were other religions being practiced at that time, and of course there's the false idols and all of that, and there's a whole lot of back and forth on iconography and all that. But at the end of it is just God is a jealous God. Now the Ten Commandments, you raise the Ten Commandments. This is one of my favorite rants because the Ten Commandments, y'all, are not actually specific to Christianity. Now, them being
Right.
engraved on the stone tablets, that is the story of Christianity or within the Christian mythos. But
Right.
by and large, these are the same rules that every society since the dawn of society has had to follow so that it is not completely anar- anarchist, not
And our
anarchist, anarchical.
anarchical,
It's
maybe.
not absolute chaos. Okay. So
Right.
like if you look at oh, not Nimrod, Hammurabi, I believe it's Hammurabi. I do not have my
Yeah,
names this morning.
Hammurabi's code.
Hammurabi's code, yeah, from ancient Mesopotamia. That predates Israel by
Right.
a very long time. Like that's one of the oldest extant high civilizations that we have, because all the other ones have, sank below the sand and we don't know anything about them. But like that's where the Epic of Gilgamesh comes from. That's actually the story of the flood, predates Israel. Like it predates the people of the Levant. That story of the flood and God washing away the sins of mankind, that story has changed over thousands of years. Originally, the High All Father God, I believe it was Ea or something in the Mesopotamian pantheon, he sends down these Anunnaki, these angel type beings. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why you look around the internet and it's Anunnaki and all this, and they're these ancient aliens. And by and large, it's a bunch of bupkis. But the, at least I personally think it is. I don't want to say it's bupkis because the second I say that, the Anunnaki are going to come down in their spaceships and prove me to be an idiot. But because that's how my luck runs. I'm such a central part of the universe that just to spite me for saying a decorative sentence, there are aliens and spaceships called Anunnaki are going to come down. I don't have an inflated ego at all. I'm so humble, y'all. I'm the humblest. Um, So yeah, he sends these angels down, and they are there to do all the things. They make the winds blow and the crops rise and all that and grow. And then they fall in love with humans. And this is where the belief in Nephilim come from.
Right.
These angelic Anunnaki beings mate with humans, and they create these giants who are not part of this deity's plan. And so he sends the flood to wipe them all out.
Right.
And that winds up in the Bible. Same thing with Cain and Abel. That is a story from
Yep.
a much older culture, and it was
Wait,
agrarian
wait,
culture.
wait. That didn't come from the Winchesters?
No, sadly, Jensen,
There's
if
a
you,
whole storyline
mm,
about Cain and Abel and the Winchesters.
there is, and I can never meet Jensen Ackles. If I ever say I'm going to a convention and you find out he's going to be there, you bodily throw yourself at me, because the moment he
Why?
speaks, I will be slain in the spirit. And we're not going to talk about which spirit. Let's talk about Pan, our Lord and Savior, because oh my goodness, there is something about that man. And at first I was like, why do you have the beard, Jensen? And then I saw the beard because I heard it's like he's got a beard now. And then I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, that beard. It's
Yeah.
like it's like I coughed, and that cough may have sounded like daddy. I'm not sure. It was, if you need to edit that part, you can. Um
I know. I won't.
okay, cool. I think it's the first time I said daddy on this podcast, and if it got beeped out, I might be a little sad about it. So basically that's where that story came from. But Cain and Abel was actually I there's a book, Call Me Ishmael. And it's
Uh-huh.
basically the story of like a talking gorilla. Like he can actually speak, and his name is Ishmael, and he's very old. And he basically, it's kind of a Valentine Michael Smith breakdown of human history, only he's
Mm-hmm.
not coming from Mars. It's a very interesting book. But he raised this, and the more I researched it, the more I'm like, no, this was actually like a teaching proverb for the ancient Israelites. Cain and Abel, two brothers, one gives a gift and offering of meat, the other a gift and offering of grain. And the one who's offering the meat slays the grain giver.
Right.
When you are a nomadic people who live off of their livestock, you use meat. Now, ancient subsistence farming techniques were not particularly not effective, streamlined. There's a specific word I'm not pulling up here. They didn't yield super high quantities because they're not the GMOs of today. They didn't have industrial tractors and all that.
Right.
So they needed huge tracts of land to produce enough food to feed these relatively, like by today's standards, small but still huge for the time city states. And
Right.
so the meat giver slays the agrarian. And that was, look, we're best, because the ancient Israelites were, in fact, nomads
Nomads. Right.
along in the Levant. And so a lot of what is taken as this kind of literal interpretation of the Bible is just not accurate. So, and I'm sure that there are things that I'm factually incorrect about. I am not a Christian theologian, but these are the things that I have come across over time.
So I have a funny story that's along these lines. Well, that's
Mhm.
actually about the Ten Commandments. So Moses comes down the first time with the Ten Commandments and breaks the Ten Commandment stone tablets because
Mhm.
they're worshiping Baal and and orgy and all this stuff.
Mhm.
So I go to a pagan event, and there are, just like there are good time Christians who like to have a good time and then go to church. There are good time pagans,
Mhm.
and there are good time pagans get together and they have a good time.
Mhm.
So I had been asked to go to this one. I didn't know anything about it, but my teacher had said, come to this. And so the the actual um the actual ritual circle was in this holler, like in between a set of hills. And you were camping on the other side of the hills. So we get dressed, we're in robes. We have singulums, which are belts, and we're all in our finery, and we come over the hill, and what we see is a woman calling the quarters, and she has a huge bonfire in the middle, and it's made up of furniture. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, it had chairs and tables. Like, all I could think was, why would you burn such a perfectly good chair? But anyway,
Mhm.
and she was cracking um glow sticks in the quarter colors and throwing them into the fire, which is toxic, right?
Mhm.
And then on top of that, half the pagans were good time pagans, and they were all naked. And I never rolled that way ever. And so I turned to Dick Sells and I go, this is why Moses broke the Ten Commandments. And Dick started laughing and he goes, well, let's go on down. And I said, no, I'm not going
Mm-mm.
down there.
Mm-mm.
They're
No.
throwing toxic sticks into a fire. No,
Mhm.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. I've never needed to be skyclad so bad I want to get lung cancer. Like that's
Right.
I'm good.
I took off my robe and went back to my, I went to bed. I was like, I'm done. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's my story about good time pagans and
Mhm.
glow sticks of all things. It was the glow sticks that killed me. We're
Literally, they could
we're an
have.
earth
Yes.
centric religion, y'all. Come
Right.
on.
The number of times that I have had to tell young seekers like we oh okay. So there I'm not going to mention names for the perpetually innocent protection. When we had our public group in Gainesville, we had this young man who, have you ever known somebody who just he needed to be a bombardier, like ordnance, like he thing go boom, like that was where his
Right.
joy lived. And I had to tell him, I kid you not, at least 1,000 times over the course of like 5 or 6 years, do not put petroleum products on my ritual fire. All right. I don't
Right.
care if you use a quartz crystal to light it, which is a thing you can do, folks. For those of you who are not woodsy, you can actually use a crystal to light a fire. It's through refraction in the sun. I don't care if you use a magnifying glass. I don't care if you make one of those little bow things and you wiggle the stick back and forth.
Right.
I don't care how you do it, but do not put kerosene on my ritual fire. Same thing like with my fireplace. I use my hearth for some of my
Right.
practices. It is the
Right.
heart of my home. Do not put something that will give me cancer in the place where my ritual fires go.
Yep.
Also, like burning tables and chairs, those things are treated. The process of pressure
Right.
treating wood is highly toxic. Look up Superfund sites. Places that pressure treat wood, like historically, are so toxic the government has to dig giant craters out of the ground so they'll stop poisoning water supplies. Very awful chemicals.
Yeah.
So yeah, the chemicals will kill you, folks. So this young man, there was this time I was not there. I was visiting the colds of Canada. And I come back to a story of a fireball. And I'm not talking roll 8d6s. They had trouble getting the damn fire going. Now, incidentally, I believe this may have also been the weekend where the young lady who was priestessing for us, since all of the normal priesthood were gone, or officiants were gone. She may have gotten a little caught up in the moment, and her Southern Baptist came out because instead of "so mote it be, amen" came out, and she never lived that down. But after a fireball was sent up to greet the gods, I believe that she should be forgiven for being
Right.
a little like off her game because yeah, apparently, yeah, that ritual fire we had to just take all those ashes and yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, you just, this is not Burning Man, folks. This is a ritual experience.
Yes. Not Burning Man. Well, we have come to the end of time. Not the end of
No,
times, the end of our time. Let's be clear. We don't believe the rapture's happening.
Raptors
Or
maybe, Raptors maybe, because we're
raptors,
playing around with
definitely.
cloning. But I think we're
Yes.
going to get Raptors before we get Raptures.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah,
And my resiliency corner today is go find something that makes you laugh, whatever it is. If it's a memory, if it's a TikTok of a possum being scared out of its mind, which is, you should look up. It's funny as crap. Um, uh, yeah, there's a possum. He's eating candy, Halloween candy, and there's a scary thing beside it, and it goes off, and it's hilarious. I think
yeah.
it's funny.
Thanks to
I sent
AI,
it to
we now
Kyler.
have pandas and mountain lions and all kinds of things with this exact same thing, and it is life. Every time a new animal shows up, I break up. It's wonderful. So,
So find something that makes you laugh and be in that laughter and just be in the
mhm,
moment of laughter and joy. That actually produces good, feel good chemicals in your body. It does a lot for you physically and
mhm.
mentally and emotionally. So go find something to laugh at. What's your resiliency corner?
I'm gonna tag in on
Don't
the
throw
same
yourself in
thing.
front of a chariot.
Yes, please do not do that. Because honestly, the closest to a chariot you're going to get these days is a Tesla, and you may break off the front end of it. Um, my, I'm not pro Tesla. I'm sorry. Um, but I will tag in on this. Go look up Robin Williams' 2005 HBO special and watch it from start to finish. Some of the jokes are dated. Um, George Bush, the younger, the lesser, I yeah, George Bush the lesser was king slash president at the time. Watch it all the way through. You will hear me use those jokes. I will not always credit Robin Williams with them, but they have
Mm-hmm.
become a central part. I was a young man when I saw it, and he actually was the one who let me like his knowledge of politics helped me
Mm-hmm.
to begin to explore as a young man
Mm-hmm.
things and concepts that I didn't know about. And honestly, Robin Williams has kind of made me the man I am today. So, all hail St. Robin of the Williams. But definitely go and see it because if you can get through that without laughing, you may need therapy. Just going to toss that out.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the man
Maybe
is
a little bit.
hilarious.
All right. Well, that is our show for today. I hope you guys have a magical day and we will see you next time.
Hail and farewell.
Thank you for listening to Urban on Witches. Please reach co-host Kyler Petrie and Rev Dia at urbanonwitches@gmail.com. That's urbanonwitches@gmail.com to suggest topics for shows or comment on past episodes. Please join our Discord channel, Urban on Witches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban on Witches. Follow us on YouTube at Urban on Witches to watch all episodes. And listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. Rev Dia is a witch for hire as an officiant, life coach, astrologer, geomancer, and medium, and can be reached at www.revdia.net. See you next time. Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine in all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community. Thank you for joining us on the Circle Podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary, and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Circle Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites, such as iTunes, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.